Well, hey there, it's been a long time.
Very long time.
Very.
How did you sign in?
Well, I had to put the passcode in.
Yeah,
I did the link from the town website. Yeah, went from the town website.
okay. I'm just curious because I just got a message that I've been signed out because someone else signed in as host. And I don't see anybody else but you and now Jason Cleary coming in.
I came on earlier, but no one was there, so I signed out.
Yeah. I'm just curious.
I wonder who the co-host is. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
I'm having my fruit salad and seltzer
Oh, good for you.
You're also being recorded
It's all right.
for posterity.
That's
Yes.
okay.
for years.
One at least. So how have you been, Chief?
All right. Busy as always, but
I think that's the state of the state these days.
yeah. I think if you're not busy, something's wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm ready for a vacation though. I think I need one.
Now we should just do like the European countries. Everybody takes the month of August off and then comes back all refreshed and rejuvenated.
It's so smart, isn't it?
Makes perfect
No.
sense.
No, everybody's on vacation at the same time.
Well, you know, but there are
Go to
plenty of
different
places to go.
countries. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it is interesting. I think in this country, how does that saying? We live to work and Europeans work to live.
Yep.
Right? And it's such a different, I like it.
Oh,
Hi, Greg. Hi, Diane.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So if you see me tipping my head a lot, I have new glasses and I'm having, I've never worn, Greg, I told you this. And I've
Yes,
never worn, and these are progressives. And I guess I have an astigmatism in one eye, so I'm not sure which way I'm supposed to look and tip. And anyway,
you'll get used to it.
we'll find out. I'm back on Friday. There we go. Oh, Diane, you're a hoot.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'll say this though. It is better than the alternative.
Agreed.
but
100%.
Yes. What do they say? It's not for I'm going to say it's not for the faint of heart. Uh-oh. Where do we go? Oh, there we are. Okay.
No sighing yet.
Gail.
Yeah,
Too early for sign.
that's right. No sighing until after 9.
Okay. I'll remember that.
Robert's rules.
Robert's rules in the addendum, or addenda.
Mm. Mhm.
Alrighty, silence this. There we go. Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Appears that all the selectmen are here, and I will call the meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order on Monday, March 21st at 6:32 p.m. I want to welcome everybody to the meeting tonight and let you know that this meeting is being recorded. And minutes are being taken by the illustrious Gail Hunter. So I would ask if there's any public comment on items that are not on the agenda. Apparently not. So I have a short report from the chair. In our last meeting, we were talking about scheduling an opportunity to talk about outdoor dining. And we had talked a little bit about checking in with the Downtown Improvement Committee and seeing whether they were doing anything about addressing this issue as well. I spoke to Steve Carhart, who's the chair of that committee, and they are very much involved in a parking survey for downtown, which is primarily focused on surveying the village itself, the abutters to the village, and who would be most affected by parking within the village. When I raised the question about outdoor dining, Steve said they did not have that included in their survey, but they were quite willing to do that. So basically, the way that we talked about it was that I would call for the board to please submit to me questions that they that they think might capture information in a survey regarding outdoor dining, and that we will discuss those at our April 4th meeting and then pass them on to Downtown Improvement to be included in the survey. Sue Thorne is one of the people who's doing it, and I think maybe not Sue Thorne. Linda Crosby is one of the people who's doing it, and she was very enthusiastic about getting questions from the board. The second issue that I wanted to raise in my report tonight is regarding the discussion that we're having tonight in about an hour on the feasibility report for regional dispatch of public safety. And I just want to let people know that we will not be taking any public comment tonight. This is the first chance that the board has had to review the report and discuss it. And I'm going to make a suggestion during that discussion that we arrange for a public hearing probably after town meeting, after the annual town meeting, as this matter will not come before the town meeting until the special town meeting in June. So those two items were two items that I wanted to share with the board and with the public tonight. So let's move on to our agenda. We have Alan Wilson, our illustrious moderator, here, and we are going to be discussing several aspects of the annual town meeting, which is coming up on April 25th, the last Monday in April at Memorial School. And we need to move towards finalizing the warrant. So Greg, you want to tee this off?
Sure, thank you, Jeff. So a number of issues to just review, and we are close to finalizing things for the annual town meeting come April 25th. In terms of the CPC, we have a list of projects being recommended by the committee, as well as the finance committee. They have approved it as well. And so I can turn it over to Jack if he wants to just briefly walk through the list, or I can run through it, whichever your pleasure.
I would,
Whatever you'd like, Jeff.
Jack, I'd be happy to have you give us the run through on this.
I was afraid you'd say that.
If you'd rather not, we can have Greg do it.
No, this is our Super Bowl every year, so I'm happy to present our recommendations to you.
This is
we had
actually, it's March Madness now, Jack.
It is March Madness. I am happy to say that we had a productive year. Once again, we have 3 areas in which we may give grant money to. Open space recreation is one, community housing, and historic preservation. We had a budget of about $1 million this year, which included money in reserves plus new money of $585,000 that came in, will be coming in, I'm sorry, for fiscal year 23, and that's about $420,000 of revenue collected from the surcharge and expected $165,000 in state match. The reason we had some higher reserves were we were fortunate to get a much larger than expected match from the state this year. So that said, I'll go through as briefly as I can, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it. Each category has a 10% minimum allocation that we must set aside, and that amount for this year was $58,548. It becomes a moot point in that we had grants of over that amount in each category. In the event that we would not have at least that amount in each category, it would be held in reserve for future expenditures. But the open space and recreation grants that were approved by the CPC this year were $7,000 for bike and pedestrian racks, $800,000 for the Pine Street Field, $35,000 for work on the Causeway Brook Sawmill Brook near the entry to the Memorial School, $7,500 for management of open space Western Woods, $10,000 for the Winthrop Field drainage, and $20,000 for pollinator gardens areas to be determined throughout the town. In the areas of community housing, we made one large grant for $200,000 to the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. Historic preservation, we are recommending additional funds for cemetery and park restoration of $25,000, engineering study for Tux Point Rotunda of $50,000, and a restoration of antique photographs, fire buckets, and fire helmet preservation for the fire department for $10,000. That's our slate for this year. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the board? Go ahead, Becky.
Hi, Jack. Thank you very much. This is, you always do such a remarkable job over there. I understand there are some questions regarding Pine Street, the old burn dump site.
Okay.
Is that anything, are those questions that have come up since you all and the FinCom voted this?
We've had no questions to us, and the FinCom has unanimously endorsed the complete slate before you.
Greg, can you answer that one then, please?
So there were some debates about whether or not the site should be used for other purposes or not. But in the end, as Jack indicated, both the committee and finance committee, both the CPC and the finance committee both endorsed it unanimously. There have been some more details from the engineers. There are some additional challenges, and the field itself will probably be on this smaller than what was originally hoped for. But they do feel they can still produce a field that has value, certainly for practices.
If that's the case, does it make sense to think of other uses?
So, I mean, that's, that's a policy decision on your part. We have not advanced other possibilities for that. There was some analysis that looked at, the possibility, a couple, 3-4 years ago, we did look at possibility of a combined public safety complex at that site. It's really too small for the combined use. There was a look to see if public safety could, not public safety, DPW could go to that site as well. It was felt that again, it's awfully tight for their purposes, and that the School Street site would be better for DPW if they are to move.
Thank you.
The third site, the third option was a potential location for a senior center, but again, I think more in-town location is preferred.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Vicki, what are the questions that you're referring to?
It was just a note Greg had mentioned under anyway in under CPC and the town administrators memorandum.
Right.
So that's what I was referring to.
I thought you had other questions that you had heard from citizens.
Nope.
Okay.
That.
All right, Eli.
Yeah, so some years ago, I think it was Paul Barkley, when he was on the board, had raised the question of whether or not any of the land at the burn dump could be used for cremains. And I'm wondering if with the engineering problems that they're seeing with the field, if the field has to be a little bit smaller, does that mean that there's going to be any space left in there that could be reassigned for a small cremains area as well?
It's possible, but I will say that the work on now analyzing the cemeteries in general found quite a bit of potential space for cremation gardens, if you will. And so I think the need for cremation space is pretty well accommodated in our existing cemeteries. Full 4-plot areas are more of a premium and will be harder to satisfy over the long term, though we do have areas where we can do that as well, at least on the short term.
Any other comments or questions from the board on the CPC budget? Okay. So we would need a motion to endorse the projects proposed by the CPC.
Jeff, I'll make a motion to approve the list of projects that have been listed by the CPC, the budget for fiscal 2023.
Second.
Okay, so moved by John and seconded by Ann Harrison. Any further discussion? A roll call vote. Eli,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes,
John,
Yes.
the chair makes it unanimous. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for all the work that you put into creating this.
You're welcome. Thank you all, and see you at town meeting.
Yes. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the budget review, including BOH staffing. And Greg, do you want to make some comments on this before we go on?
I'm sure. So again, Finance Committee has completed their review of the preliminary budget, have made some alterations, not too many significant changes, but some noteworthy ones nonetheless. They did approve, as you know, backfilling a police officer position because of an officer who's been out on long-term disability leave. They did approve reducing the amount of overtime and adding a second floater to the fire department budget. Concerning the health department and Board of Health, they approved the budget as basically a status quo budget, but are supportive of moving forward using ARPA funds to fund up to a full-time health agent. And so that's not something that is actually voted on at town meeting. Those ARPA funds are under your control. And so, so the budget being voted on at town meeting for the Board of Health would, as I say, basically be a status quo budget. It did add a few hours a week, a couple of hours a week for the health nurse. Otherwise, it's, as I say, a status quo budget, but you can supplement that with ARPA funds to move forward with a health agent. And so at their last meeting, last Thursday, the Finance Committee met again with members of the Board of Health, and there was agreement to go forward on that basis. The other, excuse me, the other major staffing question that remains on the table is whether or not to proceed with the SAFER grant. And again, as a grant, those funds are not approved by the voters at town meeting. However, if we do go forward with the SAFER grant, we are committing the community to proceeding with funding those new SAFER, those positions that are funded for the first 3 years. In year 4, we would be picking up full cost. So while it's not required, you could put a question on the town meeting warrant as to whether or not voters were supportive of moving forward with the SAFER grant. So as again, similar to Board of Health, the fire department budget that would be approved would not include the SAFER grant because there's no need for funding at this time. But going forward, as I say, at the latest year 4, there would be a need to have that funding. We could consider gradually ramping up so it's not quite a hit. Then again, it depends also in terms of what's happening with dispatch in terms of the amount of additional funding that might be needed versus moving monies from one operation to another. So there's that question for you to resolve. And again, on the Board of Health, assuming that you're comfortable moving forward with the ARPA money as a way forward for the new health agent position. There was some fine tuning of the library budget as well, based on discussions at the Finance Committee meeting last Thursday. In essence, originally we were proposing, Andrea and I were proposing taking the custodial dollars that were in the library budget and moving it over to a combined facilities. It's from the library's perspective, they would much prefer to keep that in their overall budget, having to do with state formula grants and how the state views overall expenditures for libraries. And so we agreed to put that back in the library budget in their salaries, and keeping a small item still in building cleaning for some of the additional outsourcing, window cleaning and pest control. So that is again a small change from the original budget that you've seen back in December. But again, that was agreed to by the FinCom and is part of their recommendation for the budget going forward. So in terms of decisions this evening, besides the overall budget, making sure that you're comfortable with it, specifically if you're agreeable to moving forward with funding the health agent position through the ARPA funds, and then secondly, how you want to handle the question of the SAFER grants.
Any board comments on these position items? Becky?
I definitely support Board of Health agent. And I like the idea of asking the voters if they want to cover more costs for a bigger public safety budget in terms of the SAFER project, SAFER grant. That's where I stand.
Eli?
So I support most of the recommendations. Per my thinking last meeting, I think I still support the SAFER grant. As far as the non-binding advisory measure on the warrant, I think that this particular item is likely to draw a lot of discussion, and we've already been around this a few times trying to tamp down on the amount of discussion that we're going to cram into this particular meeting. So I'm not sure that putting a non-binding measure like this on this particular meeting is a good idea. I think what would perhaps be more appropriate would be to, we could consider something that for the June town meeting, but I think what would be probably more appropriate is if we simply give residents notice that we're going to be discussing this over the coming months and set up some public forums around it to get some guidance that way.
Eli, when you say get some guidance, are you referring to get some guidance as to whether we should accept the SAFER grant if it's awarded?
No,
Or how we should proceed if we do accept
it. Right, how we should, whether or not, because the original discussion was whether or not voters would support funding past year 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think, get some better guidance on that. I don't think that we should try to seek that guidance by an advisory measure at annual town meeting.
Okay. John?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. A couple of questions with regard to the Board of Health, the health agent. I guess we're seeking somebody who would be part-time at this point, not full-time.
No, it's a full-time,
Is it going to be a full-time slot?
yes.
Well, I guess the Board of Health is still working out how all of the various responsibilities kind of get carved up. I mean, for years now, we worked without a health agent, and we've all looked, I think, at the list of responsibilities that the Board of Health has, and they're pretty extensive. And they've managed to deal with that, I guess, with a number of consultants. I don't know, I assume the consultant count goes down, but that's adding a full-time equivalent person there who should have a pretty broad skill set. And I'm not sure how the hours are going to work out, although we've got 3 years to figure that out, I guess, right? With the ARPA money, to figure
Yes.
out how that's all going to fit together. So that's an observation that I have, and I assume that they will reconcile how those hours are going to fit together and who's going to be doing what and who are we still going to have to reach out for with regard to expertise. For instance, I know the septic area is something that you pretty much need to have somebody who's an expert with septic systems. It's not somebody on your payroll to deal with that, but that we'll be keeping an eye on seeing how that will get reconciled over the coming years. But if we can find a full-time person that can deal with the broad range of activities that a health agent requires, that's great. The second observation I have, I'm in favor of pursuing the SAFER grant. Like Eli, I don't have a strong opinion on having to have a vote or something, but that's not something that I think we need to vote on right now. The SAFER grant, we can chase down independent of that, and the financial implications are not going to hit us one way or the other for another 2 or 3 years. So if we decide that it's a topic that we might want to have some sort of guidance or vote on down the road, that's fine. I think a hearing or two would be good. And in any event, we've got to find out what the story is with the SAFER grant. And I see the chief has his hand up, and he can probably give us some timeline on that. Right now, we're dealing with a lot of theoreticals as to how it all might fit together. But I think a decision from a budget financial perspective is still down the road a bit, and we can certainly discuss it. Those are my observations.
Okay, thank you, John. Ann?
I think it was covered with John's question, but I want to explicitly, is there money enough in the ARPA grant to fund a health agent for 3 years? And is there something better we could do with it if we can't find a person who has the multiple skills needed?
The answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second question is like our discussion of the burn dump under the CPA. We could probably come up with some other ideas for how to spend that money, but I feel pretty strongly that this is the only town department that doesn't have a department head. And as a health agent what a health agent would bring, in addition to, as John said, divvying up the responsibilities for managing what goes on in the health department. What a health agent would bring, in addition to that, is the ability to join in statewide planning and regional planning for health services. And with a health agent, we could apply for grants through the health agent. So the health agent would be the person who would coordinate the grants with the Board of Health. So there's a lot of reasons why we want to get a health agent on board. There was discussion in the FinCom meeting 2 meetings back regarding there should be regionalization within the health department. But regionalization is not a switch. You don't flick a switch and you have regionalization. You have to find partners, you have to find money for it, and you have to work out a solid structure of responsibility as to how the regional resource is allocated. And to do all that very much falls under the purview of a health agent. So I'm strongly supportive of the health agent. You know, we've talked a lot about, well, if you can find one, and but the market is the market, and you work with what you get, and you try to get the best person, the best fit, and the best skills to serve the health needs of Manchester. And I think all of the speculation about what happens with the person, you know, are we going to be able to get a full-time person, is speculation. And we see what we can do to come up with the best person who's the best fit with the best skills for Manchester. We need this position very strongly. So
Thank you. That's very clear.
What I would like to do tonight, I think and I'm going to recognize Chief Cleary in just a minute. What I would like to do tonight is to have a vote of the Board of Selectmen to allocate the ARPA funds for that position. I think this has gone back and forth a lot, and the recommendation coming out of FinCom was that they would support going forward with ARPA funds. There was a mixed reaction in terms of how they would support beyond the ARPA funds in the town budget. But I think that we need to make a decision tonight to support a health agent position with the ARPA funds. The SAFER grant, and I'm going to, like I said, recognize Chief Cleary in just a moment now. To my knowledge, has not even been granted and won't be until sometime end of April, beginning of May. So it's not like, oh, we got time on that, because I think that's another direction that we as a board need to consider in terms of the services that we want. But I don't think that we need to make any votes about whether we would accept the SAFER grant tonight or not. So with that in mind, I would entertain a motion regarding if the board is prepared to do that tonight, regarding allocating ARPA funds to a health agent position.
Mr. Chairman,
Just a minute, Sarah.
I wanted to speak to the Board of Health position.
Good, that's fine. Just a minute.
Okay.
So is there an appetite in the board to make a vote up or down on that tonight?
Question, Jeff, are we allocating a specific amount of money or
Yes.
a specific, okay. Then my follow-up question would be, what if the search comes up with a very good person on a part-time basis, but not a full-time basis? And the Board of Health would have to, you know, maybe they'd make a judgment and say, we found a really great person, but they're only available, I don't know, you know, 20 hours a week or 25 hours a week, not 40.
Jeff, can I speak to that?
Sarah, just a second, but I need to let
I
John
just need
say-
to explain the FinCom position.
Okay, you can explain the FinCom position when John's done.
Okay,
The answer to your question, and I checked with Greg on this, is we're not committed to spending the full amount that we would set aside. The use of the ARPA funds has been fairly fluid so far, but once they're committed, they're committed. So it's not like we lose the ARPA funds if we say we want to use this for a health agent. Okay,
Well, so I don't,
So-
I'm clear,
so
if we vote
if
for
you-
X and we're only going to spend, say, 0.6 of X, we've got 0.4 of X. And
it
where does
goes
that money
back to
go?
the ARPA funds. If it goes back into our pool of ARPA funds.
Oh,
If
okay,
that's the
all right.
If that's the Board of Health's recommendation, that they would want to have this person at 6/10 time. Okay,
So I understand, that's fine.
okay, all right.
So,
Chief,
so just to be clear, there is flexibility because the budget from the general fund supports the status quo, which is the full suite of outside contractors. So the assumption is one way or the other, though that'll change depending on who is hired and their skill set. If we find someone who's full-time and can do the full suite, then those contracted dollars all roll back to the general fund and aren't spent. If we find that our best option is to hiring a part-time person who's going to handle just Title V, then we will continue to spend dollars on food inspections and house inspections, that sort of thing. So we do have that flexibility within the existing budget plus the ARPA, and what Jeff indicated is accurate in terms of, yes, any ARPA monies that were not expended roll back into the unexpended pool and you can reallocate.
okay, in terms of bringing this particular part of the discussion to closure, Chief Cleary, I'm going to ask you to hold on, and I'm going to recognize Sarah Melish. Go ahead, Sarah. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. So the concern with the finance committee was if we adjusted the budget for a full-time health agent, it would have resulted in a decrease of the contract services. And the flexibility between contract services and salaries is somewhat limited. So it made more sense to approve ARPA funds for the $86,000 for the health agent. If they don't hire a full-time health agent, then that's okay. And we asked them to come back to us in December of 2022 based on the results. And at that point in time, if they've determined what type of person they're hiring and the expansion of their services, then we would look at including it in the budget for 2024. That was where we came out. It was just too much in flux.
Thank you for clarifying that. So are there any further questions from the Board of Selectmen in regard to opera funding and for the Board of Health agent?
Yeah, you had asked that we should vote on whether or not to apply the ARPA funds. Could you be more specific in what you were asking there? Is this for the FY23 budget?
Yes.
Okay.
The specific motion would be, I believe,
Jeff, wouldn't it be immediately?
the number would be, no, because we would,
It could be made available immediately so they could start hiring.
I mean, yes, but realistically, by the time we get someone on board, it's going to be July.
Right, but I mean, as far as they could start hiring now, whereas if it was in the budget, they couldn't start till July 1st.
No, you're correct.
well, I would expect even, Sarah, if it were in the budget, that they would start looking right now, knowing that the position would start July 1st, but that's not the case. It's not in the budget, so Greg, is it your recommendation that it would start immediately? That the funds would be available immediately?
I'm fine with that. I like I said, just realistically, by the time we go through an advertising process and a search process, we won't be spending it anytime in the next 3 months would be my prediction.
Sure, okay. Does that answer your question, Eli?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And we have, in the budget that I have before me, a full-time salary figure of $84,000. I'm going to call upon the chair of the Board of Health to confirm that that's the accurate figure with benefits added on.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes,
I believe the amount that we submitted to the Finance Committee was $86,000.
Yeah, yes.
okay. I'm looking at an old spreadsheet then. All right, so it's $86,000 salary with benefits added on.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ann,
Would we be paying the benefits out of ARPA funds as well? And could we have that number?
Greg,
So I was not anticipating that. So our health insurance increase was lower than projected. So we do have dollars in our health insurance account and the other benefit accounts to cover this.
does that answer your question, Ann?
Yes, yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Is the board prepared to make a motion to,
Jeff,
You know,
before you make the motion,
go ahead.
I just have a quick question. Are we going to say up to 86,000 in the motion, or are we stating 86,000 of ARPA funds?
The motion hasn't been made, so
Nope, that's why I'm asking now before the motion gets made.
I
So
would I would definitely do it as up to. I'm sorry, Greg, I interrupted you.
Nope, you said exactly what I was going to say.
And Jeff, I have a question, follow up to Ann's comment
Go ahead.
or
Go
question.
ahead, John.
And I guess this is for Greg. So the benefits are coming out of another pot. Of the
Correct.
ARPA pot. Okay. Do we care? Is there an advantage to having it be ARPA money?
Well, it uses up more upper money and takes away some flexibility there.
Yeah, and leaves other money elsewhere. I just don't know all of the implications in the two different pots. That's all.
The pot that the money is coming out of is the pot that's allocated for insurance benefits and other benefits that
Right.
accrue to employees. So it makes sense to use that money as it's allocated.
I agree. It's rational from a categorical perspective. I'm just looking at it purely dollars. But I guess it's fungible. It doesn't make any difference. It's dollars no matter what that we will expend.
I wouldn't quite call it fungible, but because it has to be spent, that money has to be spent on benefits.
Right.
We couldn't increase the salary, for instance, to $95,000 and take it out of that account.
No.
Or we would have Sarah bearing down hard on us.
Maybe I should have asked her the question. You're right.
No, I think Greg's explained it really clearly.
Yep.
But we always have the option of increasing the availability of ARPA funds if we need it.
Yep.
Cover the salary. it's flexible. We don't need town meeting vote. That's the benefit of it. In my opinion. Sorry, I'm out of line.
You are. Keeping you in line, Sarah, is like keeping me in line in your meeting. Okay. Are we prepared to make a motion tonight? If you decide not to, this can be moved on to another meeting. But my own feeling about this is that we should bring closure to it.
Agreed.
Okay, Jeff, I'll make a motion that we expend up to $86,000 of ARPA funds to hire a health agent, the benefits supporting that salary to come from our benefits account. And let's see, that position to start July 1, did we agree to that? I think.
It's fine.
Yeah.
That position to start when someone's hired.
Yes. When someone is hired then.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Eli?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes,
Becky?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. We got a lot more to do on town meeting and on the budget. So let's move on to Chief Cleary's comments. Thank you for being patient, Chief.
No problem. I'll be brief. I just want to remind everybody that with the SAFER grant, it covers 100% of salary and benefits for 3 years. Whereas nobody previously, when I asked, could make the promise of keeping those people or funding those positions in year 4, I think it would be premature or ill-advised to not support accepting it and then worrying about year 4 sometime during year 3. It does make a difference. So as soon as I understand the board's willingness to accept it, we have 180 days after it's awarded to either accept it or decline it. But if I'm going to advertise for positions, it makes a difference whether I'm advertising for 1 or for 3. I would also have to order gear, lockers, make sure we had a bed space. So it has a lot of other effects moving forward as to how I can plan to hit the ground running. Also, the next academy that would be best suited for any new hires would be in September, but it's already filling up and I can't hold slots. So the longer it takes me to get people in the academy, the longer it takes me to get the full use out of them as full firefighter paramedics until they're properly trained. So from my perspective, a vote of support or a vote from the board that we will accept the SAFER grant, if that's your purview, the sooner I have that, the better I can plan going forward.
Okay, Chief, could you clarify, because I'm relying on my memory.
Sure.
When you expect to hear on the SAFER grant?
I know they are currently under review. I got an update the other day that the SAFER grants are currently under review. And depending upon the review process, it could be end of April, it could be May, it could be June.
Okay.
It depends on how many applications, or if they award some and people turn them down, then that money goes back in and they re-award it to people that weren't awarded previously.
Okay. I was not expecting to push this off until the day the grant was awarded. But with all the other things that are going on with our preparation for this town meeting, to move it into a meeting in April.
Okay.
Or maybe even the first meeting in May at the latest. That was my intention when I said I don't want to vote on it tonight.
Sure.
Because just clarifying and voting on the ARPA funds for Board of Health agent position.
Understandable.
You know, I'm just trying to manage the time for tonight.
Sure. And
So
I would strongly advocate against some sort of non-binding town vote to make a decision such as this, since it really wouldn't have an impact other than increasing our service for 3 years.
Okay, and we need to take up that
Sure.
issue as well.
Thank you for your time.
But I appreciate your explaining the logistics of moving forward and the academy, et cetera. And hopefully a sooner rather than later decision will come out of on the grant itself.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay,
Jeff, can I just ask one follow-up question for the chief?
sure, go ahead.
Chief, do you know, does the 3-year clock start when they award the grant or when we accept it?
I believe when you accept it, I will have to double check on that.
Yeah, okay. I was assuming that, but it's worth.
Yeah, I will double check and reread the fine print.
Yeah, thank you.
So that means that when you accept it, Chief Cleary, you would like to have candidates that you've been vetting.
Or at least starting the, yes. If it
you
was
have-
going to
if
be
you have the
accepted,
clearance of this board.
yeah, if it was approved to be accepted as soon as it was, then I'd want to get the process going as soon as possible. To have people on board at the earliest possible time after July 1.
So if you were to hire, if the grant were to be awarded the second week in May and you were to hire somebody for July 1, does that mean that you would only get 2 years and 10 months of funds?
Well, I would have to double check. Again, I really, it would be premature to start the process. I know that I'd be at least hiring one based on the approved budget.
Yep.
I could put out a hiring to see if there's interest, to say one, but could be as many as 3 positions and get the ball rolling that way, to see if there was enough interest. Usually get more interest if there are a solid amount of positions, but if they're made aware that the grant could be coming through and there may be more hires, then I could get the process started sooner. So if I did get it sooner, I could hire sooner.
Okay. Okay, that will help shape our timing and discussion.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann,
This is for the chief. You had mentioned that you applied for 4 positions. And do you expect to go back and say, can I get the grant for 3? And if so, how is that going to affect the timeline?
Well, I would have to go back and negotiate with the person that's appointed by FEMA, given that I expressed the need to be 4 and now I'm expressing the need to be 3, to explain it to them why I only need 3 and can still meet the goals that FEMA awards it for. And that would be achieved by letting them know that the floater would be assigned to a shift. And that would give me 4 shifts of 4 with 2 in and 2 out. It was initially applied for 4 with the possibility of the floater staying on if approved budgetarily. But that would have to be negotiated with FEMA to go from 4 to 3. I've not been through that process. I'm not really sure how long that would take.
Thank you.
okay. we need to go over the remainder of the budget, not line by line, obviously, but Greg, do you want to make any comments about the school budget?
So the school budget is, the increase is lower than what was originally projected through a sort of give and take process with the with Town of Essex. The school committee reduced the overall request in order to have Essex's apportionment come in a little lower. So because of how that apportionment formula works, that dropped our increase. Instead of a 3%, it's basically a 2% increase. So those, normally we're in the 3 to 3.5% for a district increase. So those, but because of the overall budget and the way apportionment is working based on student enrollment patterns, it's resulting in a little bit 4.29, I think was the final number for Essex percent increase. And for us, it's a 2% increase. And again, it has to do primarily with shifting enrollment patterns. So that did free up some dollars on the town Manchester side. And some of those dollars then are what is enabling us to fund some of these additional positions without going over the 2.5% typical tax increase. The overall increase for next year will be over 2.5 because we're picking up the final portion of the elementary school bond. So not 100% of that project was bonded initially, and they are moving forward with the final piece of that bond. And that's an excluded debt, so that's outside of 2.5. So we have the 2.5% for general operating and standard capital, and then an extra 0.7% increase for the final piece of the school construction bond. Overall, still significantly lower than what was originally projected, mainly because they were able to take advantage of much lower interest rates. In fact, they got this last one in the nick of time before interest rates started to decline. So that was helpful. So as I say, the overall budget relies on a 2.5% tax hike, plus another 0.7 for the remainder of the debt exclusion for the elementary school. On the capital side, again, we're continuing to be pretty aggressive in our capital expenditures. We're a little over 3 million in the proposed budget. There was some shifting of a few things. The Sweeney Park project has come off for this coming year. That'll show up again in FY24, we would anticipate. We don't have numbers yet. The engineering is not ready, and getting a good solid estimate of what that project will cost is a little further down the road. So that'll reemerge probably at next year's annual town meeting. So as I say, overall, the budget is very similar to what you saw originally back in December, with the exception of fire, police, minor changing on the library side, and some of the switching around of some capital items. But it sticks to the original projections in terms of revenues that are needed, and I believe is ready to move forward.
Okay. Rick Rogers. Could you please identify yourself and your street address?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road, Manchester. Also chairman of the Library Board of Trustees. Just wanted to just double check real quick with I can't see the numbers in front of you, so just wanted to be sure we had gotten the number back to the full 524,016, I think it is, to be the 2.5% increase compliance for the state for the library budget.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Greg, is that back to that figure that was submitted by the library in December?
Yeah, it's real close. It's I don't have that figure right in front of me, but I know that Andrea was redoing the figures. We put 11.5 into the salary line and kept $22,000 in the well, it used to be the comprehensive cleaning line, and so that's that 13.5. Putting it back in, and then there might be another adjustment on the book expenditure. I just don't have that final figure in front of me.
Right. Yeah, that was just because they're so tied with the 19% and this, that, and the other, right? So I just wanted to be sure, because it, as we've discussed with FinCom, right, the repercussions are pretty dramatic for the town. So as long as we hit that 2.5% over 3 years average, we're all good at the library. So thank you very much.
Yep, that's exactly what we'll make sure it happens.
Perfect. Thanks.
Just to clarify what Rick Rogers was referring to, the library budget under state law must increase 2.5% each year, and that's the legislature's decision to put towns and cities in a position where they need to continuously support library services and cultural services in general, but particularly library services. When the contract position was pulled out and put into a salaried position, but in a different entity in the budget, that messed up that formula, and the repercussions are severe. We would lose interlibrary loan, we would lose ability to get grants. There would be a lot of repercussions that we would not want to see in Manchester. I think, and Sarah, you could correct me on this, that the number of interlibrary loans requested in the last year by residents of Manchester was something on the order of 15, 16, 17,000. I think that's about accurate. I'm going again on my very failing memory.
Yes,
But-
thank you. It was 10,987 in 2021, and it tends to be up to 14,900. It was that just 2 years ago, so the last year prior to COVID. Many things increased during COVID times when physical materials went down. So database use last year was over 67,000 for our community.
Yeah. So all those things would go away if we don't do the 2.5% increase. And that's what this last bit of tinkering in the budget is about, because those funds were moved to accommodate a custodial employee as opposed to a contract service. Eli.
My comment's not library related. Are you okay if we move to something different?
I am, but let me just do one thing. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, go ahead, Eli.
All right, a question on capital, in particular, the docks at Reed Park, transient docks. We were talking about upgrading those to include electricity and water, which would generate more revenue. And those were very, very popular in terms of revenue production the first year we introduced them. So the question is, given that the harbor master found used boat, therefore reducing his capital expenditures on boats. What was the reasoning that FinCom did not allow or did not recommend or declined to put the funds back in for the Reed docks, which would presumably be a revenue generator?
So I think the general feeling was that some more homework was needed in terms of what sort of rates could be charged for dockage, and what sort of demand was there for hookups, for electric and water hookups. I mean, it really started out to be wanting to prioritize the pickup truck over the dock improvements. And then when the used boat issue came up, they said, well, we'd still like to stick with our revised schedule. In talking to Brian today, he was comfortable with leaving it as it is for now. And if he's able to do a little more homework and pull things together, he wouldn't mind the opportunity to potentially bring it up in June, at the June meeting.
So as a supplementary budget item?
Correct. And it's coming out of the waterway fund, so it's a fairly easy item to do that way.
All right, it seems to me it is just a, when we put that in, we realized fairly quickly that we were pretty low priced in general. And it seemed like we were far, far from the cap of what we could achieve in revenue from those docks.
Yes, I agree with that. I think providing the amenity, water and sewer, water and electricity, I think is a wise move longer term, and I think it'll enable the whole harbor budget to be more self-sustaining.
Well, if we can consider it for June, okay. If it was not an option to consider it for June, I probably would be jumping up right and down right now, asking that it be reinserted into the capital budget for the annual town meeting.
Yeah, I mean, you can. It's your choice.
I'll await other board member comments.
Becky?
I made notes on that as well regarding Bion and Reed Park. So I'm not going to say what Eli has already said, but I am going to say I agree with him. Thank you.
Sarah? Sorry, Ann. Sarah Melish?
Sorry. The issue presented at the Finance Committee that Bion felt obtaining a new pickup truck was more important than extending electricity and water to Reed Park. It's all a matter of options, and we couldn't do both within the budget.
Sarah, was that conversation before or after he secured the used boat?
In combination of that. So 110,000 was appropriated last fall. And he's using that entire amount to acquire the new boat and to upgrade the motors on the other boats. So nothing changed in the capital budget. And the pickup truck is relatively expensive. Right, Greg?
Yes, but originally you had the pickup truck and the replacement engines for the safer in the FY23 budget. And now with the new approach on the getting the used boat and using those dollars also to obtain the new engines, we took out 40,000 from capital because we no longer needed to have it for the safer engine replacements.
I mean,
The safer boat
right.
engine replacement.
Just to make it clear, the budget we have before us is a 3.2% increase in the tax rate. And we've held it at 0% and 1.5% for the last 2 years. So we can add things to it. We have excess levy limit, but I'm not sure the taxpayers are going to be very happy with it. That's the FinCom's opinion.
Right, I understand that, and that's very logical. This particular expense is from the waterway fund and not from the general fund.
And
I think it would be to our advantage to approve it as part of, at the annual town meeting, because that would allow us to take advantage of the new facilities in this coming season. As was pointed out, this is, although it is an expense to install the services will generate further revenue. And the sooner we get it in, the more revenue we get. So I would favor moving this into this year's budget.
Becky?
My biggest concern is the extreme percentage in use increase that our harbors have seen over the last several years. And I'm just not sure that, and I get what Sarah's saying, and I don't envy the job of trying to figure all that out. But I wonder if our support, financial support of the harbor master is commensurate with the vastly increased amount of work on the harbor master and everybody involved with the harbor. So I agree with Ann. I would agree to move that forward for ATM.
Greg, is there any issue in this transition period with the harbor funds being able to support this capital outlay to the point where there begins to become a return on investment?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Jeff. I'm sorry.
You're saying that this does not come out of general fund. This comes out of
Right, out of the waterway fund. Yes.
out of the waterway fund. So my question is there any issue with expending money on a capital project out of the waterway fund, depleting the waterway fund for other uses that are necessary and that the harbor budget is depending on, up to the point where these funds start to create a return on investment because the system's installed and people are using it and being charged?
Right. So the big looming expense for the waterway fund will be the phase 2 of dredging.
Absolutely.
That's the big looming expense. That's 5 or so years away, most likely, given the pace of permitting with the Army Corps.
And we're talking about millions of dollars.
Yes, we are. We will need to be very aggressive in trying to pursue some grant funding for that effort. So we do have those looming expenses. The ability to recoup these dollars are pretty significant. Brian, I think, is bringing in close to, I want to say 20,000, maybe high teens in current dockage fees. He thinks he can easily double that if if the amenities are provided and a higher fee is charged for those folks who are staying overnight. So he does feel like he can recoup these monies and then some. Before, you know, that 5-6 year period of when we're going to really need the dollars. But obviously, you know, there's no guarantee if gas is $10 a gallon, we probably won't see very many boaters coming in and out. But on the other hand, he thinks that gas is very expensive. People are going to be coming to us because we're a shorter distance than a lot of other places. So I'm not sure, you know, what outweighs the other on that one. So the short answer is Brian feels pretty confident that this is an investment worth making. You know, if you want to wait until June, or if you want to wait a year from now, he's okay with that. He does feel like there's an opportunity that the sooner the better we can take advantage of it.
Okay. Eli,
I'd like to make a motion that we put the upgrading of the transient docks at Reed Park with support for water and electricity back into the capital budget for the annual town meeting.
Second.
to the amount of,
Greg, what was the previous amount?
Originally it was 40,000. That would do all of the dock, I believe.
All right, in the amount of $40,000.
Second.
From the Waterways Fund.
In the
from
water.
the waterways. Any further discussion?
Well, one question, Jeff. So this vote of this project, supporting this project, means this project can be done and be available for the summer of 2022 season, this summer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Which makes June a very difficult time anyway, because now you're probably have lost half the summer. Something can't be built in a day. So
Unless you're June.
unless you're Rome. Something. But yeah, so the earlier the better, so he could get a jump on this and be ready for the boating season. That's a fair assumption then. And Bayon's not here, but
Yeah, he's pretty confident. He's pretty confident he can move quickly on this if
okay.
You know, no guarantee, but he feels
Just checking on the
relative.
timing.
Yes.
Ellen, I've got a motion before the board that's been seconded. Is your comment in regard to the issue of restoring funds to Reed Park Dock? Ellen Lufkin, your hand is up. Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion, or do you want to proceed to vote? Okay. Ann,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Eli,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
the chair votes yes. Are there any other issues related to the capital budget that we need to discuss tonight? Okay. So do we need to finalize the FY23 budget in a vote tonight, Greg?
So I'm assuming we will have a special meeting next week to give final approval to the warrant. So if you want to hold off on your final approval of the budget and the capital budget at that meeting, that is fine, or you can do it this evening.
Next week being when?
Well, we need to discuss that after Monday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
That's right down to the wire.
It
Okay.
is, yes.
Uh,
So the reason is for waiting until after Monday is that is
My
when,
understanding is that there's a FinCom meeting on the 31st. Is
correct.
that accurate? And Sarah, do you have further votes that you need to do on this budget?
We have to approve the final FinCom report on the 31st, which includes all budget items.
Okay,
We have a ZBA meeting on April 5th for 40B. And meetings on April 13th, April 20th.
okay, but that's after this all has to be laid to rest because it has to be
Right.
laid to rest by Friday.
Right.
The
Right,
first.
so we're hoping to approve the final FinCom report on the 31st, which means we need all additions and changes. Which you just did something tonight.
Okay,
Well, then,
okay. So we're looking at a meeting on the 29th or the 30th, Greg, is that right?
Yes, correct. It
I would-
can be a morning meeting, it can be, whatever works for people's schedules.
Okay. And do we need to decide that right now? Yes.
No, we do not.
Okay. I'm concerned that we are almost at 8 o'clock. We're half an hour over. We're supposed to start our dispatch discussion at 7:30. We're half an hour over on that. And we still haven't reviewed the warrant.
Jeff, I'd recommend that we vote the budget at our next meeting, the special meeting.
I would agree. Okay, so so we need to do both next week. Is that what you're saying, Greg? Finalize the warrant and finalize the budget from the Board of
Yes.
Selectmen's point of view? In
Yes,
terms of recommendations? Okay. All right. Let's talk about the warrant. And I'm going to limit this discussion to no more than 15 minutes. Sarah Melish. Sarah, you have your hand up? And you're muted.
yeah, FinCom is not, you've seen the warrant. We need to vote on it on March 31st,
Correct.
just so you know, just setting, that's all. That's all I've got. I gotta unmute, lower my hand and unmute, we're good.
Okay, we have a draft warrant. Greg?
so the bulk of the items are your standard budgetary items with I'll just run through it. So Article 1 is your standard accept reports. Article 2, paying you and the moderator nothing for all of your time and effort. Article 3 is the budget for the vocational school. Article 4 is the town operating budget. Article 5 is the capital budget. Article 6 is the school operating and capital budgets. And trying to scroll quickly. Article 7 is the community preservation projects, as you just endorsed this evening. Article 9 is the annual funding of our OPEB contributions, the other post-employment benefits trust fund, primarily health insurance for retirees. We continue apace to fund that. So it'll be fully funded by the early 30s. Article 10 is the annual approval of the revolving fund for the Park and Rec Department. And then we have three special articles. Article 11 is the proposal to amend the limited commercial district to allow research labs as a special use in the LCD. Currently, it's limited to the very western portion of the LCD, and this would allow it to occur at a minimum in the eastern part. It may, depending on what happens on Monday night, a week from tonight, at the planning board's meeting, they may allow it in a couple of other portions of the LCD. Article 12 is to have the town accept a local option to charge a local room tax for short-term rentals. We need to fill in a percentage. It typically is anywhere from 3 to a maximum of 6%. So we need to fill in a percent in that article. And the local option law typically says you impose it in the subsequent quarter following the vote. I'd recommend that you just wait until the first of the new year. People may have made commitments, through the fall for short-term rentals. So this would give ample time for people to tell their clients that there will be an additional tax on their rental charges. So that decision is needed at the latest before you approve the warrant. And then finally, Article 13 is an article to change formally Selectmen, Board of Selectmen, to the Select Board. And then the last article, Article 14, is in case we need to tap into additional reserve funds, in case budgets were increased from the town floor. And then since this is a combined warrant for the election, Article 15 is the election, but that doesn't take place until May 17th. So this is how the warrant is shaping up. As you know, we're slated to be at the new memorial school and the new gym and cafeteria combined. I have it starting at 6:30. I think that's what we've said, but I actually I wanted to confirm that because I had a few times running around in my head, but I did put 6:30 as the start time for the annual town meeting.
Okay, I'd like to ask Alan if he could speak to this warrant in terms of, you talked to Alan about pulling together a consent article that bundles a number of articles that are usual business.
First, let me just address the time of the meeting. What you voted, I think, was 7 p.m.
So I was getting confused. Okay, so it was 7?
Yep.
Okay.
On the consent calendar, I was not planning to do it this time. There
really only 4 or possibly 5 articles that I think wouldn't generate any discussion. The 4 that I'm sure wouldn't were 1, 2, and 9 OPEB, and 10 the Parks and Rec revolving fund. By the time I explain the consent, the 5th that might go in there is the appropriation for the technical school. But I think by the time I explain the consent calendar, we can probably vote all of those just as quickly, if not more so. And last year, the vote on the consent calendar was surprisingly not unanimous. And so we had to do it all again anyway. If you think a consent calendar would help save time, I'm perfectly willing to try and do it.
No, I'm going by your guidance, and I think you're right. The explanation time takes a long time. So from the Board of Selectmen, we just talked about capital. We just talked about CPC, CPA, I mean. I assume that there's no comments on the school at this point. We've been following that along. And the articles that Alan was just touching on, 1, 2,
9 and 10.
9 and 10, yeah, that was it.
Possibly 3, he said.
And possibly 3, the Essex Tech. I assume there's no comments on those. So are there any comments on other articles that people want to clarify until we go to the article on the room tax?
Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Comment, Article 11. I know it's going to be reviewed again. There's a typo in it. The Pine Street and School Street for School Street needs an R in it.
Yep.
Thank you, Eli.
Are you
Jeff,
ready for comments on the local excise tax? Oops. Oh, never
I'm
mind.
sorry.
I'll let Becky go.
Liza.
Go ahead, Becky.
I just wanted to say if there are, simple punctuation typos, do we just correct those later?
Yeah, just send me a quick note. I'll get those corrected.
I thought that would be not just 1 or 2.
So we're going down to Article 12.
Yep.
When this was discussed previously, we had recommended a 3% increase. Any concerns or other suggestions besides a 3% increase?
Nope,
Or a 3% rate? It's not an increase since we're setting it for the first time.
I still support a 3%.
Okay, so can I get a motion from the board to set this rate at 3%?
I'll make a motion that we set the tax rate for Article 12, which is the imposition of a local excise tax upon the transfer of occupancy of any room in a bed and breakfast at the rate of 3% of the total amount of the rent for each such occupancy.
Second.
Does that take effect January of 23?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to discuss that just for a moment. This is just on the rate that the motion was made. It wasn't on the entire motion.
Right.
Let's vote on the rate and then come back to the January 23 issue. So are there any further discussion on the rate? Okay, let's do a roll call vote. John,
Yes,
Ann,
Yes,
Becky,
Yes,
Eli,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. It seems like a long time to delay the implementation of this. And I know that we have multiple seasons, but in terms of short-term rentals, I would like to see this moved up to November 1st. I think that does give the property owners ample time to understand this and set up their books for it. The money is collected by the state and then brought back to Manchester from the state. The reason being that captures the beginning of the holidays. So unless there's a firm reason for going as far out as January 2023, I'd like to suggest that we implement this on November of 22, November 1st. Any discussion?
I don't have a strong opinion about the degree to which that's going to impact any existing rentals. I don't imagine that it would, but I certainly can't state that from a position of expertise.
I'll just want to confirm that the state doesn't require it to be on a quarter. One of their quarters, start of one of their quarters. But I'll just
So
confirm.
that would be October 1st, correct?
Right. Which I assume you wouldn't mind if that were the case.
I wouldn't.
I'll just confirm that that's okay.
Can we? So then we would need to do a final vote on this at our meeting next week.
Right.
Okay. All right, so we have a rate and I've thrown the date up in the air.
And we'll defer the conversation or the vote on that until the next meeting.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to just go ahead and make it October 1, I'm confident the state will accept that because that is the start of the quarter.
I think that's fine, that we could do that, Greg. And then if the state says it doesn't matter to them, then we could vote next week to do it November 1st.
Point of information. Alan, if there was a motion to delay the onset to January 2023 on the town meeting floor, would that be within scope?
Yes, I think it would.
All right, then Jeff, I will support your motion.
So the chair moves that Article 12 is implemented on October 1st, 2022.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call vote. Becky,
yes,
John,
yes,
Ann,
yes,
Eli,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Any other? I had one question on Article 13. Some of the literature that I had looked at, some of the articles and resources that I had looked at about this particular article indicated that some towns are going to the legislature to make this change. Is this something we're proposing to do it as a simple bylaw change? Is that an issue?
Town council didn't raise that as a concern.
Okay,
I can double check with her.
okay. So I would leave it as is, so we can vote tonight. And if town council comes back with an opinion on that that says, no, this would have to be a special act, then we'll have to reformulate the text of the warrant of this article. Okay, are there any other articles that people want to make a comment on, or are we prepared to vote the draft warrant, move the draft warrant forward with the changes that we've made tonight?
Alan has his hand up.
Alan Wilson.
Thank you, Jeff. Question, I want to come back to Eli's scope question. So the warrant will say October 1, and the question is whether a motion on town meeting floor to change it to January 1 would be within the scope?
January 1 of 2023.
Right, right. So the motion on town meeting floor would move the date later.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's within the scope. I answered it maybe too quickly without thinking through the implications of a motion to move the date earlier, which I think probably would not be within the scope.
Probably be illegal anyway. To do a retroactive tax.
Well, not to make it retroactive, but to shorten the delay, I think would
Yeah,
not
to
be.
move it earlier than stated in the warrant. Understood. Thank you.
Thanks.
So can I get a motion to move the draft warrant forward as the warrant for the 2023 budget and town meeting?
Planning board is still going to be talking about their article. Aren't we going to delay this vote?
Right, we may have some fine tuning of Article 11 based on their final work on Monday, the 28th.
Unmoved.
Did you say unmoved?
I did.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, the nodding our heads that we're good and you're going to finalize it
That's fine.
at your meeting next week. I think that's sufficient.
That's fine. Sarah Melish.
FinCom has not yet seen the warrant. We meet on 3/31.
We're going to have to vote on the warrant before that.
You can, but we can't approve it until 3/31.
But you need to see the warrant as approved.
Exactly, and we have not seen anything yet.
Right, but
So,
you want
again-
to see what we're going with.
Would like to circulate it if we can.
Okay, and we will do our best to have that happen.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any further commentary on the annual town meeting? Okay, then let's move on. Well, actually, let's set a date for this meeting that we're talking about for next week. What we need to do in this meeting is to take any changes from the planning board, integrate those into the warrant, and vote the warrant. Correct, Greg?
Correct, yes.
And to make a final vote on our recommendations for the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
So we would need statements whether or not you recommend approval for each article.
Yes. And we would also need to do, we don't need to do the assignments of the articles in terms of who's going to speak on the floor.
We do not need to do that next week. No, we have time.
Okay. So this is a relatively short meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, do you have any constrictions on your time on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week,
No, I don't.
other than what we're about to place on you?
That's the only one I know about.
Okay. Does anybody else have any conflicts?
I would prefer not Tuesday.
And for me, Tuesdays, the only day unless we do it Wednesday morning.
Well, Tuesday's okay with me if it's before, earlier, a little bit earlier, but I have other commitments at 7. And you said this is short? What's,
Yeah, the plan, John, was to do this during the day.
oh, I'm fine.
How early can you all meet on Tuesday?
5 a.m.
Thank you, Eli. And after Eli's been awake for a while, how early could you meet? Could we meet at 8:30 Tuesday morning? My issue is that I'm going to be on the road and I need to pin it down in terms of where I'm going to be and how I'm going to do this.
And when do you return, Jeff?
Wednesday, late afternoon,
The following Wednesday?
30th.
Oh, the 30th. Oh, okay. All right. I was just trying to get signatures, that's all.
Oh, I'll be around for signatures.
Yeah, yep.
So 8:30 Tuesday morning? Yes, nod heads yes, if that works.
My only hesitation is if the planning board is editing things, and I mean, I'll have the vote Monday night. That's okay. I can do it. I can do it. That's all right. I was gonna say it might take Sarah an hour to get it to me on Tuesday morning, but I can get it from the meeting the night before.
Becky, are you headed into work on Tuesday?
Not at this moment. But I'll make it work, whatever. Tuesday.
How late do you want to go, Greg?
I'm fine with 8:30. Just if that works for everybody, that's fine.
9 o'clock?
Will we be doing this? Is it Zoom or?
Absolutely. Yes.
But we're also going to be doing the final voting of the budget, which typically we run department by department. So
8:30?
8:30.
Okay. So it's 8:30, March 29th.
Yep.
2 agenda items, the final vote on the budget and the final vote on the warrant for the annual town meeting. Okay. Let's move on. Thank you, Alan. This is the point at which you usually say, if you don't need me any longer.
I was going to say that, except I was muted. If you don't need it any longer, Mr. Chairman, I will depart.
Thank you, Alan, unless you want to stay for our cheery discussions.
I'm gonna come into your other discussions of dispatch. So I'll miss this one, but I'll be there for the others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next item on the agenda is dispatch. This is the first opportunity that the board has had to review the feasibility study and make comment on it. As I said at the outset of this meeting, we're not taking public comment tonight. And my suggestion is that the trade-off for that is that we do a public forum after town meeting, after the annual town meeting during the month of May before our special town meeting. So
But this is online now, right?
It is, yes.
So the most important question at this point in time is whether members of the board feel that at this time, and this is not the only time, that there are any areas that you feel need clarification.
Yep. Oh, Ann has her hand raised. I'll put my hand up and go in order.
And go ahead.
This is actually about the timing of the forum. I understand that we're very busy between now, but I think it would be to our advantage to get our positions, if we have one or two, in front of the voters before, as early as possible. And I think May is going to let this thing percolate in town longer than is good for us.
Okay. And in addition to that, are there any areas of the study that you feel need further clarification?
Minor one, there's no reason in the world to monitor channel 9 and the marine radio. It's a chat channel.
Okay. I would like to suggest that that goes to Brian and the question is raised towards him. And also, Chief Fitzgerald's here tonight. We could maybe ask him if that's something that's currently monitored.
Yes, Greg, if I may. Jeff,
Go ahead.
excuse me. Yep. Yeah, we only monitor 16. We don't monitor 9. That's part of a couple of clarifications that I have. I've gone through this a couple times, and I'm willing to put a document together rather than go through it all tonight. So, in the interest of time, so I can send that along to everyone sometime this week if that's what you'd like.
That would be good. Thank you. Eli.
Okay, I had 4 items. One, the radio repeater stations that don't have battery backup, and then we sometimes put generators on them in times of extended power failures. Have we looked at solar support for those? I can't remember.
I don't believe we have, but Todd can elaborate. I think we have battery backups on all of them. They incorrectly indicated we didn't have that now.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether or not solar would be an option instead of generators at all for those. And I don't really need an answer on that right now. I just thought I'd raise it since I was reading through it again on our report. Second, the Swift Reach emergency notification, is that going to be a replacement for Code Red in this option?
That's our choice. We don't have to switch over, but they offer a different platform.
Have we looked at Swift Reach, and is there any opinion on the differences between that and our Code Red support?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, I defer to the chiefs on that.
Okay, don't need an answer right now, but if that can get folded into whatever comments get written up, that'd be great. Third, data conversion. Can we get some clarification on who's going to be doing the heavy lifting? How much actual effort will be involved on our side, and how much will be involved, done by the rec? And I understand that they'll be footing the bill for that, but there's still sweat equity involved. And I'm curious to find out a little bit more scoping of what the actual effort on our side would be. And then the last item was, has pretty much already been covered, a clarification of the marine support, which I think is forthcoming. And I didn't have any other comments right now.
Clarification, marine support separate from the Channel 9 monitoring.
Clarification around differences of what the support, would there be any difference in the support that we have right now and support from the rec? And what those and characterization of those differences.
Okay. Chief Fitzgerald.
Yeah, sorry, I just put my hand up in regards to the radio infrastructure question that Eli had. That was part of my one of my comments, and just want to let you know, I'll send that along as well.
Okay. John Round.
Yeah, Jeff, I have a couple. Yeah, one was this this Marine Channel 16, and I guess that's going to be answered as to how that might be handled in this proposal. Along those lines, also direct monitoring of alarms, which would not be handled in this proposal. How does that get handled going forward? And I wouldn't expect, maybe Chief Fitzgerald has spoken with them and knows, but I don't know that they would.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore.
We don't do that. There's nothing that is involved there.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. I think those are the only two items that let's see. A question probably for the rec. I mean, they mentioned they have 44 FTEs, and they also say that in their proposal that they don't see changing their staffing. Does that mean they're at 44 right now, or are they at some lower number? FTE is what is suggested based upon a formula that is used in the industry, and I'm interested to knowing if they're at full complement. I think the understanding is that we are a small enough volume, or they've got the room that nothing changes, but I need some confirmation on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they have a few vacancies, but I can get you numbers.
Okay.
Any other things from you, John?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, Becky.
I would like to hear what the Chief Cleary has to offer. Both chiefs actually have to offer up. My questions otherwise have been answered already. Thank you.
So we've said that we're going to put this to a vote of special town meeting. And the question, it's not a question. I would tend to agree with Ann that we need to put forward where we stand on this as soon as is reasonable. And your suggestion is before a public forum that would be held in May. So we have 2 board meetings in April prior to town meeting, the 4th and the 18th. Chief Fitzgerald said that he had things that he wanted to get clarified with the rec. Chief Cleary, do you have anything that you wanted to get clarified with the rec, having reviewed this document?
I'm going to go back and review it again. I didn't see any discrepancies from our side. First read through that was any different than what had been said or what was expected.
Okay.
But if I do locate anything, I will get the answers and pass the results on to you as well.
Could you do that, please?
Sure.
Preferably sometime this week.
Will do.
So that before we go into our meeting on the 4th, we have all of the clarifications that we need, and we can direct those to the rec and see whether we can get a response.
Will do.
Right, thank you. And
I'd like to suggest that rather than having it at the special town meeting, that we put it on the ballot. The ballot is available to everybody in town. Town meeting is not, just because people don't have, and because we don't have enough room. And I think this is a subject that's of interest, substantial interest to everybody in town. And it would be more equitable to have it decided by the voters rather than the town meeting members.
so you would constrain the article at town meeting to whether or not the dispatch should go to a vote of the voters.
Yes, would be my choice.
So how does that change anything in terms of if people at town meeting who arrive and show up for town meeting say, no, we don't want to do that, then
I think we can put it, I mean,
we
the Board of
can
Selectmen.
vote on this. We could vote on this right now. Having done the due diligence of getting this study. We have some clarifications we need. But the contract is between the town and the rec, and the board's responsibility is to execute that contract. So we're giving the town an opportunity to speak to this.
And that's what a public hearing is.
So you're suggesting pulling it completely? I mean, when would you do this, Ann? When would you set it up so that it could go to a vote of the town? I mean, would you try and do that at our annual town meeting?
I think we've already passed that point. And I think what I'm asking is for a second election after the special meeting.
Okay. What do other board members think about that?
I think that we have enough open positions on the existing ballot that it would be much better to put it into that ballot in terms of getting more people out to vote on.
Greg, just a point of clarification. Do we need to go before the town meeting to put this on the ballot? Or can we vote to put it on the ballot?
No, you can put it on the ballot.
And sorry to interrupt, but I agree with Eli.
So if we were to do that,
So,
go ahead, Greg.
well, I was just trying to ask, what will the ballot question be? Would it simply be the regional 911 center versus in-house, or would it include associated budgets with those two options?
My thought is that it would include the budgets. Because if we remain in town, there are significant upgrades that we need to implement.
Right.
So
So I think, I'll have to double check, but I think those have to be done at an open town meeting, budgets. So you would then put it on the special town meeting. You know, okay, the ballot resulted in staying in-house, and therefore we need a supplemental budget to move forward with that, both from a capital and operating perspective.
The item on the ballot would be a non-binding referendum, correct?
Correct.
So the numbers in such a referendum would be advisory, and therefore they would not need a vote by town meeting.
Right, so if you want to effectuate that referendum, that non-binding referendum, in terms of the budget, then you would need to go to the special town meeting in June with a follow-up appropriation.
I see.
So just to throw out the sort of a contrary perspective, I fully appreciate that more people vote at ballot than they do attend a town meeting. The beauty of town meeting is you have a debate and that people can try to sway one another. You try to get more facts out there if you can, and then people listen and then make a final decision. So that's sort of an idealistic pure form of open town meeting. But you lose that element when you go to a ballot. But you gain volume at ballot. I fully recognize that.
The question really is whether the vote on a ballot would be an informed vote relative to a vote at town meeting. And your hands up.
I think that the vote at the ballot we could do a great deal and by having open forums can do a great deal to inform the people, the voters. And I am concerned I'm concerned about packing the town meeting. It happens.
Okay. Other board members want to comment on this? Now I look up and Becky and John both got their hands up. So let me start with Becky. You're on the pole position.
I have concerns about not having, or with it not being at town meeting, at least first, because I agree with Greg. I think that's where you get more information, not only in the handouts, but the discussions which ensue. And sometimes those are providing better and accurate information, but not always. But I would like to see it at town meeting if we're going to go that route. Town meeting first.
And what's the vote that you expect at town meeting? A vote to go to ballot or a vote to recommend?
Non-binding vote to recommend. I don't feel strongly that it, if others feel strongly that it goes to the ballot, yes, I agree that you're likely to get a lot more people, and that's what you want. But I still think that it should be a town meeting first for discussion.
John.
Yeah, Greg, you mentioned earlier, you said if it's on the ballot and non-binding, et cetera, in which case the numbers that might be put in the copy would be advisory, that you have to come back with some actual budget numbers at a later date, at say this election is in May, so in the town meeting in June, you have to come back with some specific numbers, or what did you actually say? And where are these numbers coming from?
So based on your final decisions as to, okay, this is how we would structure if we were going to the regional in terms of the station improvements, for virtual connections and or staffing to make up for the time when the dispatchers aren't there. Or
Right.
alternatively, if you're staying in-house, the dollars needed to upgrade the software and other capital needs, in addition to any additional staff to bolster the ability to handle multiple calls.
Would we have any more information than we have like now? Would you have to go back to, I guess, maybe those numbers are a year old or something, you'd have to kind of
Well, we'd update the numbers.
we kind of update, but that's not to say you couldn't update them now
Correct.
and go in with numbers. I'm just trying to figure out, in other words, the numbers then are coming from the same source that the numbers are that we have now. It's just maybe they're updated, but there's nothing to prevent us from updating things for the ballot information. But is that but is it a statutory requirement that in a subsequent town meeting you have to come up with numbers, or is that?
I think that the statutory requirement, John, is that there's going to be one budget or a different budget, depending on which way the vote, and in this case,
Right.
the vote during the town election goes. And that budget has to be approved by the voters.
So the only way we approve appropriations is at the open town meeting.
Right.
We have exceptions for overrides and bond votes over $1 million, that sort of thing.
But both of those numbers would be presented to voters on the ballot anyway, and would be known.
Yes.
Okay, it's just that they have to be, I guess, authenticated or affirmed.
Correct.
Affirmed at the vote. Okay, so I understand how that works. But that the timing with the ballot would give you, that gives us an opportunity to do all of that within a short period of time, by the end of June.
Then the risk is that voters don't come forward and vote the budget at the special town meeting.
In which case you're stuck.
Eli, you're shaking your head.
Well, you're stuck until next year.
Yes. which has happened for several years, I think, one way or another.
Any other comments on this? So what is being suggested is that we add.
I have my hand up.
I'm sorry, Ann.
If we were to decide at some point to go to the rec, it would take some time to switch over. I think we can work with the budget that we're currently approved, the assumption that it will take most of a year to move if we decide to move. I think the current budget allows us to continue with our current level of dispatch unchanged. So I'm not sure that I understand the budgetary impact in the 23, or the impact on the 23 budget.
Yeah, it's a bigger impact if the decision is to stay in-house and you want to boost the in-house operations. That's where you have your biggest impact.
The question is, do we want to boost them this year or next year?
Do we want to pay for it, or do we want the state to pay for it?
No,
but Ann's point is that you could wait a year before you implement a more robust in-house operation.
that's particularly true because we've got a budget set now. And I think
You're right. You're right. It's not essential that you have a supplemental budget, regardless of the decision.
So let me come back to what I started to say. What you're suggesting is that we put another article on the warrant for the April town meeting to bring this matter to a vote of the town at the town election in May.
if I may, that's not my intent.
Or that we vote as a board to do that.
That we vote as a board to do that.
And the date of the election?
May 17th.
So are you suggesting then, Anne, that we have two public forum before that?
Before May 17th, yes.
I'm not sure where that background noise is coming from, but I would really appreciate whoever it's coming from, that they would mute while we're trying to figure this out. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Sarah Melish. Sarah?
Am I mute? Can you hear me?
No, you're not, we can hear you now.
So our position is we stand with the status quo.
What position?
That we do not change any of the budget and we do not expand any requirements beyond that.
As far as the FY23 budget as voted on by FinCom and with the changes that were discussed tonight by the Board of Selectmen, yes. When you say the position is status quo and we're talking about the dispatch decision, I want to make sure that we're not misleading anyone into believing that our position is that we remain in status quo.
FinCom has not yet voted on the
I understand.
dispatch. We will do that in April or May.
Can we ask for an early decision from FinCom? Not before March 31st, Sarah.
When would you like it?
If we're going to try and run two public forum between now and May 17th, the earlier the better.
What date?
So mid-April, the latest.
April what? April's the long month.
Yeah, I said mid-April, so by the Yeah, by the 15th.
April 15th.
No later than the 14th.
Well,
I mean, you planning on having a FinCom meeting on the 7th?
no, we have FinCom meeting on the 31st.
I understand. Are you planning on having one on the 7th of April?
I had not.
So your next regular scheduled meeting would be the 14th.
We have no schedule.
Okay.
I will try for the 7th.
I don't think that we would have. Here's the problem. The week of the 18th is school vacation. And in terms of getting maximum participation in a public forum, that's not a good week.
Right.
So we either have to have a public forum the week of the 11th, in which case we would need your vote by the 7th.
I will work towards a FinCom meeting on 7th.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you could do your forums the last week of April and the second week of May in time for the 17th election, if you had to.
We're challenged.
And what do you think about the 28th of April and the 12th of May?
Will sound fine to me.
Okay, then Sarah, you could go to the 14th. I lost Sarah. There you are. Anybody else on the board concerned about those two dates, the 28th of April and the 12th of May? John?
Oh. So we go on the 14th?
Hold on a second, Sarah.
I'm just checking the dates. I'm flipping between. Let's see. What was that? The 28th of April
28th of April
and
and 12th of May.
I can deal with that. Yeah, that's not my question.
Okay, your question is?
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what the story is. So if you put this on the as an article for our the town meeting in April, it is strictly an informative article to tell voters.
No, we're not talking about doing an article.
Okay, we aren't. We're just we're going back to the original thing.
No, we're not going back to the original thing either. We're talking about a vote of the Board of Selectmen
Right.
to put this on the town ballot on May 17th.
Okay, that's fine. So the article isn't necessarily involved with that.
And so it would take it out of the realm of the town meeting altogether.
Okay, that's fine, because I was worried about, we're trying to make that meeting shorter, not longer. Okay.
Yep.
Fine, fine.
Okay. Before I ask for motion, I'd like to hear from the two chiefs. Chief Cleary.
I just like to say that I know this has been going on for about 15 years with dispatch. And I recall during my interview before I was hired, the multiple questions I got about my experience with dispatch, my positions on dispatch, my training in dispatch. I've written multiple position papers that I've submitted to you with facts and figures and codes and standards. We've had several public forums already to this point. You now have the feasibility study that still comes out with a zero cost. And from what I can tell, not much different than was already discussed, other than it's on paper. My understanding was that any decision was going to be framed as going to the rec or staying in town, meeting some of those national standards with 2 dispatchers on duty at all times. You stated yourself tonight, you have more than enough information for the board to make the decision, and that it doesn't require the town to make the decision. From what I can see, there's no more information out there to be had other than a few numbers to be updated. And
That's,
all I would do is ask that you folks, as the board, make the decision in the best interest of the townspeople as it applies to public safety.
that's not entirely accurate, what you just said. It's not an either or rec or in-house. Because there are decisions that need to be made prior to any further input from the town related to what staffing would be like in the police station. I think that that we are incumbent, if we are taking this to a vote of the town, and that's been a request that we've gotten from many members of the town. If we're taking a vote of the town, that we need to have some idea of where we're going with staffing. And when I say staffing, I mean staffing at the police station.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Fitzgerald.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. I just wanted to clarify the April 28th date, as that's the first date for the public forum.
Well, that's what we're talking about, yeah. It
Okay,
hasn't been set. Hasn't been set in stone yet.
okay, I just wanted to pass it along. I will be out of the country that week, and it'd be difficult for me to join the public forum. I'll be back on May 1st.
Okay. Where are we? Where do you want to go? We're going to need a set of motions to get out of this. Or move forward with it, I mean. And I understand Chief Cleary's position as well.
Jeff, did we need two meetings, or can we fit or give everybody an opportunity, or just about everybody an opportunity to attend if they wish with one date? Trying to remember how we got into 2. Is that in case people can't make one of them?
Yes, and
Okay.
We're eliminating town meeting discussion from this.
Mm-hmm.
We're eliminating this being an article on the June town meeting, the special town meeting.
Understood. So
I think due diligence says that we should have 2 public forum. I mean, if you guys disagree with me, I'd like to hear it. I'm just trying to reflect back to the board what I'm hearing from you. Ann.
I'm just trying to find a calendar and see if there's a date when Chief Fitzgerald would be in town and could participate.
Jeff, if I may.
You can do them back to back if you need to.
Mm.
You know, May 5th and May 12th.
Chief Fitzgerald.
Greg took the words right out of my mouth. If we could do it back to back or, you know, stagger the days on that week.
Yeah, do a Tuesday and a Thursday, Tuesday the 3rd and Thursday the 12th.
Becky,
So with these public forums where we're hoping to share a lot of information, where would these forums be held to ensure the most people could attend? If not at town meeting?
I think your Zoom format, either hybrid or all Zoom, either hybrid or 100% Zoom, one or the other.
And what are the limitations in terms of numbers?
500.
And if there's any trouble getting in?
I'm sorry,
Several meetings before.
you don't think there's any trouble getting in several meetings before?
I said, if there's any trouble, which we've had in the past, it's one thing to herd 40 of us.
I
It's another
agree with Chief Cleary, though. We've had multiple forums on this. We've been discussing it a lot. What I would see these fora being used for is to relay the information from the study itself and to lay out the budgets.
We never went over 200 in the worst of the COVID pandemic and the worst of the 40B public forum.
I think the high was about 180.
Right.
Yep.
I think doing back to back on May 12th, May 5th and May 12th would be all right.
I will not be available for either of those. I'm out of the country. And I think that's just the way it's going to be. You know, you're going to have some who can and some who can't at this point.
You are leaving May 1st?
Nope. I'm leaving on the 30th and I get back on the 14th.
So one thought I have is that we stick with the 28th, and Chief Fitzgerald could send Lieutenant McCoy to represent him at that meeting. But I don't want to ponder on this for a long time. I'd like to make a decision about how we're proceeding.
I don't think having a public forum with Chief Fitzgerald not present would be well received.
I don't think having a public forum without having one of the selectmen there would be well received either, at least by me. So those would be our options, the 28th with a representative for the police, other than Chief Fitzgerald, and the 12th or the 3rd and the 12th, or the 5th and the 12th, without having Becky there.
Might go more easily without me there.
And
Given Becky's schedule, she's going to miss one of them anyway.
yes,
I think I agree with Eli that it's more important to have Chief Fitzgerald in general at forums. There is a primary speaker from the Board of Selectmen, and that Becky will be missed, but she's going to be missed for one anyway.
Chief Fitzgerald, when do you leave?
Leave on the 21st, excuse me, the 22nd, and back on the 1st.
So you're not going to be here for town meeting?
That was the plan. That's why I was gonna plan on being, well, if dispatch was gonna be discussed at town meeting, I was going to change my plans. But since it's now in June, or was going to be in June, I did not change my plans. I originally thought town meeting was gonna be the, the April 4th. And that's why I scheduled my vacation to the UK when I did.
So I know we have a lot of dates being thrown around. You could go back to the April 14th and the Finance Committee can meet the 7th, or they could meet the 12th, potentially, if Tuesday is an option for them. And you could do it the 14th when you have the chief and full complement of select board members. And then go to the 12th, the 5th or 12th. And Becky will be away that one time, but at least is attending the other one.
Can I get a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, but I didn't write down Greg's dates.
April 14th,
Yeah. And May.
May 5th or 12th.
May 5th or 12th, these are either one.
Okay.
A week and a half before the election or 5 days before the election.
Okay. I move that we place an advisory item on the ballot for the election on May 17th regarding dispatch, and that we hold 2 forums on the subject, one April 14th and one on May 12th, to inform the voters and to hear their reaction, their comments.
A non-binding?
Yes, I certainly meant to say non-binding vote.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to place a non-binding vote of non-binding referendum on the ballot for May 17th to move forward with regional dispatch or to continue in the system that we're in. And to hold. Go ahead, Eli.
Well, she didn't say that. She just said a non-binding referendum. So the system that we're in is not what we've been discussing so far. What we've been discussing so far is an option between um, going to the rec or upgrading our existing infrastructure to meet the fire department's needs.
So that would be 2 votes.
No, it wouldn't be. It would be a bullet item vote. You get to choose between these 2 options on the ballot.
Right, you would check off A or B. Which
Okay.
one of the following 2 options do you prefer?
Okay,
Jeff, if I may.
Becky,
So we're talking about putting a non-binding vote on the ballot. What will we do with this non-binding vote?
okay.
The same thing we would do with a non-binding vote at the town meeting. Not be bound.
You take it under advisement and the voters would expect it to steer your ultimate decision.
Does that answer your question, Becky?
It does, and I understand we've been down this road, maybe back and forth a little bit, but I feel that it's a very important decision. I don't doubt that, but I think that with the information we've been given, the information we're going to be receiving, further information, I'm beginning to feel that we should make the decision ourselves as the people who've been elected to do so. That's all.
We will.
call.
We will make the decision ourselves. Are you suggesting by your comment that you don't see fit to have a non-binding vote of the town? That's up to you.
It's not that I would disregard whatever, that's not at all what I'm saying. I just am concerned that the proper and full information gets out. And I know that's always the hard part. That's always the hard part. So I won't hold this up anymore. I've said what I wanted to say.
And did you include the public forum in your motion?
Yes, I did.
May I ask if you separate that out so that we can make decisions about the public forum separately?
Of course. May I rephrase or withdraw my previous with Eli's permission?
Yeah.
I move that the Board of Selectmen place an article on the ballot for May 17th for a non-binding vote on the future of dispatch.
Second. we'll have the opportunity at a later meeting to specify the details of that ballot entry.
Further discussion on this vote? Roll call. Becky,
No,
Eli,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes,
the chair votes no. The motion passes 3-2. The reason I asked to pull out the dates is that I'm concerned that the date of the 12th is too close to the election. And I'd like it to be the 5th.
I move that we hold forums on,
This doesn't have to be a formal motion. We can just decide that we want to do it on the 5th and on April 14th. Any discussion?
okay.
Sorry, Eli.
How do we decide with a,
Because it's a scheduling decision. It's not necessarily a full motion. If you want to go to a motion, fine, go ahead. I just want to get this discussion done with. It's almost 9:30.
Motion's a quick way to do it. You could do it, Ann.
I move that we hold forums on the question of dispatch on April 14th and May 5th.
Second.
Moved by Ann Harrison and seconded by Eli. Any discussion? Roll call vote. John,
Yes.
Eli,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes,
Becky,
yes,
and the chair votes yes. Okay. The last item on our agenda, well, no, not the last item, but the next item on our agenda is the cemetery additional plots. Greg.
So we've been working with a consultant on our different cemeteries and our ability to create additional plots. We are running out of available plots. Basically, we are down to single plots at the Pleasant Grove Cemetery. There is an opportunity to create a section. We can create an additional 70 plots. It does require removing trees and creating space for additional graves. In your packet, there was a sketch of that area. And the DPW would like to move forward with creating that space for additional plots and seek your approval to do so. I mentioned earlier in the meeting that the study takes a look at other areas and other cemeteries, Pleasant Street Extension, for example. However, this is the easiest and quickest area to expand, and the DPW felt that this would be the first request to make to you. So it's that triangular shaped area that is behind one of the homes along Pleasant Street. And like I say, it can hold about 70 new graves. So seeking your permission to move forward with that expansion.
Any discussion? Eli.
So first, I'm going to start with the disclosure. I am in a butter to that area of the 70 new graves. But I don't think this is going to influence my decision on those at all. So that area of 70 new graves is currently kind of a rocky mess with a bunch of random trees. And it's always, to my mind, been something that was slated for expansion of the cemetery. So I think that's a pretty reasonable approach to take there. The only comment that I have is a concern about drainage. I know in previous years, we've had some issues where drainage from the stream back there can be directed into all the houses along the street there. And I would request that when we arrange the rating and setup of that area, that we account for that and try to direct the drainage elsewhere. Second, the design that was presented to us has two areas for cremains bordering the driveway, the drive going into the cemetery. And I have some concerns about that, both with respect to whether or not trees would be removed. And it actually represents a closer wrapping of actual grave sites around residences than we have anywhere else in that cemetery. And I think that we're going to hear from members of the public on this, but I don't think that that aspect of this has received much vetting in the public so far.
Oh, I raised my hand.
So anyway, those are my comments on this so far.
Do I do that?
Right, so for this evening, we're just seeking permission for the 70 grave spot, that triangular area, not the cremain expansion.
Becky?
Greg, where are first of all, looking at the 70, approximately 70 graves, when I'm looking at the layout of the other graves, does each box represent a grave plot?
It represents 4.
Thank you. I was wondering how on earth you were going to fit that many in there.
Yes, understood.
Okay. And so I guess I didn't understand we weren't looking at the cremains areas either, because that would have, I think, brought more discussion, but okay, thank you.
Any other board members? Okay. Leslie Nikowitz, could you please state your name and your street address, please? Leslie, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, I'm Leslie Nikowitz, 117 Pleasant Street, Manchester, Mass. My first concern, I live actually on the corner of where the cremains are apparently being discussed. The other area where you're talking about, which is, we've lived here 22 years, the other almost 23. The area which you're talking about directly behind the Ramseys, adjacent and abutting Eli's house. Why aren't we seeing any pictures of that on this meeting, first of all? And second of all, why haven't we been notified as direct abutters?
Greg?
So the agenda package is posted online. We're happy to provide.
How would we have known about that?
It's listed in the agenda.
Right, but as an abutter, shouldn't we have been given a notice that that was going on, other than just your notice? Should I be looking at your agenda every week to know whether anything's coming up that might affect me personally?
Point taken. We can certainly try to do that in the future, and the board doesn't need to make a decision tonight.
All right, well, I would like to go on notice that I don't object to the area you're talking about, depending on how many trees are removed, because that's not been discussed either exactly that I know of, or hasn't been part of this meeting. But if you're also talking about trees being removed for the cremains areas on either side of the driveway coming off of Pleasant Street, there is a beautiful, or if not a couple beautiful old sugar maples and some other trees that are highly valuable trees, as well as the cremains directly abutting my fence on both sides. So the cremains area is definitely an area I'm and my husband are more concerned about, as are the Ramseys, who Heather Ramsey is next door. And she was one who told me about this. And I've been on your meeting for the last several hours waiting for this discussion. And I think it's important to think about not just adding more space, but also what you will be affecting to the current space that surrounds this area in terms of trees.
Thank you, Leslie. Any decisions that are made in regard to this space would have to be in conformance with the town tree policy. And I can get you a copy of that as well.
Is there a copy posted of the proposed sites of this with our plot line, our lot lines, et cetera?
With your lot lines, no. The only thing that I know that's posted is the map that was in the agenda packet that we received.
Is that
so
you?
that can be done.
I think it should be done before there's a discussion about it.
Before there's a decision about it, for sure.
Jeff, can I clarify?
Sure, go ahead, Eva.
I think the town administrator did already say that for tonight, we're not going to be making a decision about the cremains areas. We're only talking about that triangular area behind the Ramseys and abutting my property. And the cremains, any decision about the cremains area would be a separate later discussion.
Correct, but there still are a lot of trees in that zone too. And the town has been dumping sand and other various materials that when they dig graves, et cetera, in that area for a while. It was much more of a depression at one point over the last 22 years. So there have been a lot of material dumped into that area, but there are also a lot of trees. So I think before they decide to move forward, I'm not necessarily personally against that going in there, except what it will look like when it's done, which could be a lot more trees being removed.
Okay. Leslie, Heather Ramsey has also got her hand up. If it's okay, I'd like to hear
Sure.
her comments about this. Thank you for your input. I really appreciate it. Heather, could you please give your address? I think we know what it is.
Yes, thank you.
Give it for the record anyway.
Heather Ramsey. I'm the property owner at 101 Pleasant Street in Manchester.
Okay.
And I have a few questions. I have known that the expansion was a possibility and a upcoming, fairly recent or pending possibility in that area directly behind my fence and back property line. Like Leslie, I have concerns about the cremains section, but I'm happy to hold those thoughts and questions until that comes up for discussion. But for now, I do have 3 questions I'd like to ask about this expansion. One is there a buffer zone between the graves and the property line? In other words, how close will the graves be to the abutting property line?
There is a buffer. I'm sorry, I don't know the dimensions, but I can certainly get that for you.
That would be great. And I also would like to receive a copy of the tree policy at some point, please.
Okay.
Related to that question is, will there be trees planted between the graves and the abutting property lines? Will there be any kind of physical barrier there to allow for privacy, both for us and our property, but also mourners who may be coming to visit the sites?
Again, I believe that the plan was to plant trees and various plants along the perimeter. And let me get more details for you on that.
And then Leslie, sorry, Eli has already lifted this up a bit, and I'm concerned about the drainage, because if you look at the level at which the sites behind the expansion place spot, they are significantly higher than my yard. And so unless there is some unique and creative regrading, I'm concerned that it would create drainage issues and flooding that are not currently an issue in our yard. So I didn't know if there's any insight yet about that or conversation about that.
Heather, your yard is, looking at the drawing that we have before us, is your yard contiguous with the grave site as opposed to the cremain site?
So my property would be abutting the cremation sites on the right-hand side of the entrance, as well as the expansion area that's being discussed tonight. So it would, and the expansion site covers the entire back property line, my backyard.
Okay.
So this expansion, I'm not objecting to it. Obviously, it's the cemetery's property. I understand the issue. My concern is how that impacts our privacy and the
drainage.
The drainage, the issue around our backyard. I don't want to have a flood every time it rains because drainage wasn't taken into consideration. I've worked at a property where there was a significant difference between the property of the organization and the neighbor's property, and it every time it rained and every time it snowed and melted, the neighbor had not just a little flooding, had like a pool in their backyard, and I just don't want that to happen in our yard.
Sure. Okay. Do you have any other comments or questions? Because you've raised some very significant points.
I do not. My only other more of a point of order is who needs to have my email address to be in contact? I know Eli has it, but are there others that need to have that so that they can be in touch?
You could send that to the town administrator.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Becky?
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on the comment about notice to abutters. Is that not something that is typically done? I'm just curious, is it different when it comes to town property?
Well, there's no formal permitting process here. So, but I understand the preference for having that done. It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Okay, I was just curious how that worked. All right, thank you. That's all.
Okay, Eli?
So just a comment, in the past around the cemetery, Manchester Friends of the Trees and the CPC have helped with planting this in that cemetery. And I think a bunch of the screening behind, well, right next to the DPW was put in recently as part of one of those projects. And I anticipate, and it's clearly the intent, given the report from the DPW director, to add landscaping and tree plantings after the new grading was done.
Do we know if the consultant who did the analysis considered the drainage issues that are being raised by the abutters?
I believe he noted that drainage should be, given attention. I'd have to check with Chuck on those details.
Okay. Leslie?
Yes, I wanted to add a little bit more to the drainage discussion, because that is right. I know you're not talking about the cremains as yet, but there is a drain directly behind my fence in the area where you're talking about putting some of the cremains. We do have a sump pump that we put in after the Mother's Day flood that has gone off twice since then. And as does the neighbors to the left of me. On the other side of me, the Ramseys and I are adjacent with the driveway in between. So I'm concerned about not just the tree removal in the area you're talking about, but the drainage there as well, because I wouldn't want anything to shed towards my way either. There is some regrading that we're planning on doing in our yard, specifically because it does become an ice skating rink in the wintertime. So, I mean, there are issues, water issues, and there are drains that exist in the area you're talking about. So, for the cremains.
Are you talking about drains on your property, Leslie, or are you talking about?
I'm talking about the drain on the cemetery. There's a drain on the cemetery, in the cemetery's property, that is actually higher in elevation than my property. And it's directly behind my yard, behind a tree the cherry tree that's already kind of dying. And I know there's been, we have had some issues of flooding in the past that are related to like really high water tables when it's been, the 500-year flood, which may never happen again or could happen tomorrow, who knows? But I think that there are, this area, my point is that this area is not free of drainage issues and water problems.
Okay.
So what I'd like to suggest is that I'll make sure that Nate and Chuck contact both Leslie and Heather and any other abutters and do a detailed site walk so that we are catching all these details.
Okay.
Okay, I would, if possible, like to participate in that walk as well. To try and understand this better so that I can vote with some level of being informed.
And you should have my email, as I was on the Board of Health for many years and worked for the town at one point. If you don't, it's still the same email.
Same email. Okay, good to know, Leslie. Thank you.
So I am familiar with drainage issues. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I don't think that we can take further action on this tonight, Greg, until until Chuck and Nate and the abutters, and there may be more abutters than Heather and Leslie. I think they're the most direct abutters, and Mr. Bowling, Eli.
Right, no, that makes perfect sense.
So we should move this forward to a future agenda.
And also, Jeff, the abutters who are, if you're facing the cemetery, the abutters to the left of the Nickwitz's. Is that the cars? I don't know. Anyway, they're for the cremains, but I'm just, in general.
Yes. I mean, where it wraps around.
That's
Yeah.
the Rizicos.
Thank you.
Okay. It's now 9:48. Our next agenda item is BOS policies. My suggestion about this is that we, since this is second readings on recordings, second reading on town council, second reading on meetings of the Board of Selectmen, and second reading on the use of town hall. Are there any of those that we want to pull out from the second reading for further discussion? If you're comfortable with that, I'd like a motion to move each of those policies to affirmation tonight. And I'd like to pass over reading public hearing procedures.
I'll make a motion that we approve the recordings of board and committee meetings. I'll make a motion that we approve the following 4 policies: the recordings of board and committee meetings, the use of town council, meetings of the Board of Selectmen, and use of town hall.
Second.
So we've officially renamed the policy on erasing tapes as the recordings of board and committee meetings. Correct, Ann?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion from Eli and a second from John. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Becky,
Yes.
Eli,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
and John.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Any objection to passing over the first reading of the public hearing procedures?
No.
Okay. We then have the consent agenda. The minutes from 3/7 and 3 special events. The Easter egg hunt at Masco on 4/16 from 9 to 11 a.m. The kids ride on May 21st from 9 to noon at Masco. And the half marathon on September 25th. That's to give you enough time to prepare for that. 10 to 1 at the high school.
I have a few things to pull out or
Go
that I
ahead.
have questions on.
Go ahead.
I just want to pull out the Pan Mass Challenge ride. There was a lot of stuff that I found unable to really read And then there were several items where where they were Xed, and then it said see attached. And there were no attachments.
Okay,
And I know Cheryl vetted these, but I just, if we're signing off, well, we're acknowledging receipt of them. So if we go to page 5 on the Pan Mass one, the first see attached, I really got to get these glasses things sorted out. There was something about amusement rides. It wasn't checked, but it said, please see attached. Canopy or tents, please see attached.
And also the description of the event setup.
I think those need to be. Also, who verifies that the appropriate amount of insurance is actually that the receipt of insurance to release the town from any liability? Who actually collects that?
Right, Cheryl follows through and gets those insurance. Yeah.
I figured as much. Those were the questions I had on the Pan Mass Challenge one, and then on the half marathon. And this is kind of, but it just says that they're putting in porta potties. And when it says, if you are, then who's providing the units? It doesn't say anything. So, I mean, these are just crossing T's, dotting I's, I suppose.
So we can get you those additional details and you can approve these at your next meeting, or you can approve them with the condition that those items are satisfactorily provided, your choice.
I would do that, the latter.
On the half marathon, I would do the former, actually. The half marathon doesn't include the route.
half marathon doesn't include what, Leah?
The route.
The route.
Although didn't it say it was at the high school?
That's where it starts and finishes.
Okay. So excluding the half marathon, would you like a motion to approve the consent agenda, providing the Cape Ann Pan Mass Challenge Kids Ride fills out, or rather attaches the appropriate attachments that they said see?
You want those distributed to the board?
I don't need to see that. I think if, you know, as long as that is, it's, I don't think it's anything really problematic, but it's just, if it says see an attachment, they should have the attachments. And it could be that Cheryl does have.
I suspect she does. We just didn't get them into the packet for some reason. But I can follow up.
I'm fine with doing what has been proposed. I second the motion. But in the future, I would really like to have legible copy. Strained really hard to try and read this, and I gave up. I'm amazed that Becky was able to read it, particularly given all the things she's been saying about her new glasses.
Exactly.
Um,
I even took them off.
Yeah, so I think we need to have, I mean, the one from UCAN Sports LLC is very clear.
Yep.
But the handwritten ones are very hard to read, particularly the one from the Manchester Community Center. for
Right, that one was,
The Easter egg hunt. And I know how dangerous those can be.
I'll have you know, I used to be the town Easter bunny for years. Yep,
Yeah,
that was one hot suit. Phew.
I don't think I want to go there at this time of night. Thank you.
All right,
All right, so roll call vote on the consent agenda with the half marathon pulled out until such time as we get a route. Ann,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Eli,
Yes.
Becky,
yes.
the chair votes yes. Town administrator update.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Tomorrow night, we are back online here. We have a forum on the transit-oriented development requirements that has been passed into law, the MBTA transit-oriented development. So towns like Manchester that have a transit station of some sort, we have the commuter rail. There's a new requirement that we will walk through for you and those who want to attend. This is the very beginning of a potentially a multi-year process of deciding whether or not this is something that the town wants to pursue. Is it a way that we can use it to advance some of our housing goals or not? And so we will provide those initial information on it and decide how to best proceed from there. It's something that you can ask the planning board to take a much deeper dive going forward. But it is a requirement to hold this initial public forum to explain the basics of what the new law is trying to establish. And we will provide some context for what it might mean for Manchester. So that's tomorrow night at 7, and we go from there. Also, in terms of the village, I just wanted to give an update on some of the work that the Downtown Improvement Program Committee has been working on. Jeff indicated earlier that they will be participating in what is hoped to be a fairly extensive parking study of the village core area to determine how parking currently is operating and are there ways to better manage the parking that we have and what suggestions might arise from a study of current practices. They are also getting underway with their phase 2 of improvements. Phase 1 being the Beach Street area with the lighting and the sidewalk improvements, looking now towards Central and Union Streets from Beach over to Pine, and then also further down Beach to Tappan and further out Summer up to C Street. We're fortunate through Senator Tarr's help to receive some state funding to develop some preliminary plans, and the DIP will be reaching out to abutters and also holding future forums on some redesign possibilities for those areas of town, and trying to develop some engineering plans that if gain wide acceptance and momentum, then we might be able to apply for some of the new infrastructure dollars that are being made available. And they are also looking at ways to provide public restrooms in the village area, and will hopefully be coming to you with some recommendations on that. And again, as Jeff indicated earlier, they can help look at some outdoor dining interest and possibilities, though our narrow streets and sidewalks make it pretty challenging to provide that outdoor dining experience without taking up parking. So stay tuned on that. So they're underway with a full plate of activities, and we'll be hearing more from them over the coming months. So that'll do me for tonight.
Any questions about Greg's report? I just want to clarify, because it came as a wake-up call to me, that survey that was referenced about the parking is only going to be for abutters of the downtown, basically the core village area. It's not going to go out to everybody in town. Okay. Any further business that was not otherwise anticipated?
Motion to adjourn.
I think that
Second.
was anticipated. And second,
Second,
Second.
roll call vote, John,
Yep.
Ann,
yes.
Eli,
Yeah.
Becky,
Well, okay.
chair votes yes. Thank you for being patient with some very long discussions.
Sleep well, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night all. Thank you.
Bye.